Okay, this is chapter 4 over tissues. And let's go back. Here's the overview. There are 4 types of tissues that we're going to study in this class. They are epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous tissues. When it comes to, we're going to start with the epithelial. These are typically supported by some sort of a connective tissue, but they can stand alone. When it comes to these, they have an apical region on the top, so an upper layer, and then that down here at the bottom, this is a basal layer. We can also use the word basement membrane. So we're talking about underneath these cells. And usually this is secreted by these cells. It gives them something to stick to. So we'll talk about that. Epithelial cells are avascular, so you typically don't find a lot of blood flowing through these things, but they are innervated. You will find nerves coming up through here. So no blood, but a good supply of nerves. These tissues can regenerate quickly. So if we lose a large number of these cells, they're going to replace themselves. Now, the picture that you're seeing here, this is a single layer of cells, so we call this simple epithelium. This is a layered epithelium, so this is stratified. So simple and stratified are the terms. Next, we move into the shapes. Now these shapes, the first one up here is called squamous, S-Q-U-A-M-O-U-S, squamous. It's flattened. To me, it looks like we've taken an egg and cracked it on a table. And so you've got the yolk in the middle and the rest of the egg around the outside here. But that's a squamous, it's a flattened cell. Next, you see this is cube shaped, so this is a cuboidal. And finally, tall and skinny, that is columnar. So that's a columnar epithelium. So when it comes to simple squamous epithelium, simple because it's a single layer, squamous because it's flattened. These are flattened with sort of a disc shape with the nuclei in there. Sparse cytoplasm, so not a lot to these things. They typically function in diffusion and filtration. Sometimes they provide a slick or a friction reducing lining in like the lymphatic or the cardiovascular system. We talked about the tissues that line the different organs, I think, in one of my previous videos. So you're going to find that with simple squamous epithelials. You're going to find these in parts of the kidney, lining of the heart, blood vessels. They line the inner part of the blood vessels. And same thing with your lymphatic vessels. And then all those serosae that we talked about in the previous chapters. Next, this is a simple cuboidal epithelium. This is a single layer, but these are cube-shaped. So here's an individual cell. There's the cube-shaped cell there, and there's another one there. And so you can start to make out the cubes. And since they then attach here to that basement membrane, that's why we call these simple cuboidal. The functions here, you can see that we're in the kidneys. The functions typically are secretion and absorption. So kidneys make sense. So you're going to find them in your kidney tubules, ducts, and secretory portions of some of your small glands. The surface of the ovaries contain simple cuboidals. So not nearly as common as what we saw with the simple squamous, but still a normal tissue for us. Okay, next up. This is simple columnar. They're columnar because look, they're tall and skinny. Simple because there's my basement membrane or my basal layer. These are often found with what's called a goblet cell, and I may go to the goblet cell next. I'm not sure where my notes go, but we'll talk about goblet cells. Function here, typically absorption and secretion. You can see from my picture down here the digestive viscera. So the non-ciliated types of these line the digestive tract and the bladder. And then the ciliated ones, remember we had cilia, the little hairs that come off these, they line the small bronchi, and that helps move mucus through the bronchi. The uterine tubes, that helps move the ovum or the egg through the uterine tubes, and then some other regions of the uterus. Now that cilia is there really to help something move through that passageway, whether that's an egg cell or mucus, but that's the purpose of the cilia. Okay, we're going to go on. We'll hit goblet cells later, but I will show you that's a goblet cell right there. We'll come back and hit some here in a little bit. This is called a pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Now it's also ciliated, so this would be ciliated pseudostratified columnar. Pseudo means false, so false stratified. So it looks like there's layers because look on this picture. That's a nuclei, and that's a nuclei, and that's a nuclei. So it looks like you have all these nuclei in different layers. But here's what's happening. These cells are actually all connected to the same basement membrane down here, this basal layer. So even though they look like they're stacked on top of each other, they're not. So some of these don't even reach this apical surface. Some of these cells stop short of reaching the surface. But it's those nuclei seen in different layers that throw us off on these. Typically, these cells function in secretion and propulsion of mucus. Again, the cilia comes into play. So you're going to find these in the male sperm-carrying ducts, and that's the non-ciliated type. And then the trachea would be the ciliated. So the trachea being your breathing tube going down. Okay. Excuse me. This is stratified squamous epithelium. Now, stratified because it contains many layers. And look at, these are flat cells going down, aren't they? There's a lot of flat cells. So this is a different tissue down here, but these are the stratified squamous up here. These are thick membranes composed of a lot of cells, are there for protection. They protect the underlying areas that are subjected to abrasion. So you can see that it lines like your mouth, your oral cavity, and your esophagus going down. You're also going to find this is your skin. Your epidermis is stratified squamous epithelium. Mouth is stratified squamous epithelium. The vagina is stratified squamous epithelium. So anywhere that you're going to have something rubbing over, two parts coming together and you got any sort of rubbing, you're going to have stratified squamous. Now, the picture with the mouth, the oral cavity going out into the pharynx, this is kind of cool because this whole tube right here, this is all stratified squamous, but up here it changes tissue type because through your nasal cavity, it's not abrasive. So that's why it changes. I think that's kind of interesting. Okay, this is unusual, but this is transitional epithelium. So when it comes to transitional epithelium, So when it comes to transitional epithelium, like you see here, the cells can be big, round, and globular, or they can be columnar. The fact is, these things need to stretch, and when they stretch, they change shape. So you might go from this cuboidal shape, and when it stretches out, then it becomes a squamous shape. So that's why they call it transitional epithelium. And again, you can see from the picture up here, these are the uterine tubes, urethra coming out of the kidneys, and then this is the bladder, is what you're looking at there. Okay, when it comes to, so we covered simple squamous, simple cuboidal, and simple stratified, or simple cuboidal, columnar, I know it's in there somewhere. Then we covered stratified squamous. We did not cover stratified cuboidal or stratified columnar. Now, they're rare, especially stratified cuboidal. They are quite rare in the body. You find them in some sweat glands and some mammary glands, but typically they're only like two cells in the layer. That's it. So not a real thick layer. Okay, that's stratified cuboidal. Stratified columnar, again, limited distribution throughout the body. We don't see a lot of these. You see some in the pharynx, the male urethra, some glands and ducts, you might get them there. If you do see them, a lot of times they're more like transitional areas between other types of epithelium. Okay, so it's unusual. Okay, earlier I said something about a goblet cell. So here's my goblet cell. This is a goblet cell here. And what you're looking at, these little vesicles here contain mucus. So you've got the cilia up here, and if you're lining something like your trachea, you need mucus in the cilia. So when it traps something like dirt, then the cilia is going to sweep that mucus down towards your digestive system. So that's the purpose of this mucus. It's there to help entrap or to move things along. These line certain parts of your digestive system. So when food comes through your digestive system, that mucus and and those cilia are also there to help you move things through the system. Okay, so they're kind of important. Okay, that's all I want to talk about for this video. I'm going to stop here and then we'll pick up the rest in our next video.